Welcome to the Film Illiterates podcast, your home for uninformed, unfiltered, ill-advised movie talk. As always, I'm Joe Campbell, and joining me today is Nathan Stone with an N.
Hello, Joe Campbell with a double L.
And Alex Patton with an A.
Hello. Yeah, with an A, yeah.
Today is Alex's pick a flick. Picked for a flick. Alex he chose a movie for us to watch this week.
I did.
And Alex, what did you choose for us to watch this week?
I chose the acclaimed 2017 Christopher Columbus biopic.
Wait, Christopher Columbus. What? I think I might have watched the wrong movie.
Actually, remove that Christopher and remove the biopic. It's the 2017 movie Columbus.
Oh, okay. So I did watch it. I was like, okay, did we miss something with the Christopher Columbus thing?
I would have loved if we had all just watched different movies. Like one of us watched like a Christopher Columbus movie. One of us watched like from the director Chris Columbus. One of us watched like a biopic about Christopher Columbus, and one of us watched Columbus.
How many of us do you think there are, Joe? There's three of us.
There's this fourth person you keep talking about.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is acclaimed director David Fincher guesting on the podcast today.
How many shots is he going to take this time for the award ceremony? Any bets on that?
Gosh.
Oh my gosh, that's right. The awards are tonight, aren't they?
Yes, as we're recording this, it's the night of the Oscars. So, but I don't know if anyone's going to watch them. We'll see.
I've only seen one of the movies that were nominated for Best Picture this year. That's Mank. I haven't seen any of the other movies. I'm so behind.
Yeah, wow, Joe, catch up because I'm already at 5.
I mean, I think you're doing better than me. I don't think I've watched any.
You're watching better movies, probably, at least.
I don't know about that one, but okay.
Well, we'll find out this week because in just a minute we'll get to what we've watched on our own. And after that, we will talk about Columbus from 2017 from Video SAS Kogonada. But before we get into that, let's talk about what we've watched on our own. Alex, since it was your week, you go ahead and lead us off. What have you watched this week?
Alrighty, so got together with the Discord friends and we watched Mortal Kombat.
Oh, are you talking about the new one?
The new one.
Okay,
yes.
Gotcha. Sorry, the new one does not open with that song.
No, it does not, and that's actually very disappointing. The original theme is nowhere in the new Mortal Kombat, and that makes me upset. So we had the podcast last week about the original Mortal Kombat. Glad I actually got to see this one just now. I was talking to Joe and Nick about it, and Nick mistakenly took that for a good review. I want to say the movie is not very good.
Okay.
In my opinion,
all right. That's fine.
All right,
That's
we'll
fair.
leave that there.
Okay.
As a standalone movie, I didn't think it was very good. When you compare it to the original, oh boy, is it so much better. They fixed two of the main issues that I had with the original film. Was one, the original movie didn't have any blood or gore. You know, that was something that the original game had, but the 90s movie just didn't have it all. And that was disappointing. So, new one, tons of blood and gore, which is awesome. Another critique of the original that I had was a lot of the fights didn't really seem to hit very well or hit hard at all. They kind of just felt way too light and scripted. And the new one, fights are still scripted and whatnot, yeah, but at least you can feel the punches a lot more. It's a lot heavier hitting, and I think that's obviously helped out by the blood and gore that's shown. So they fixed two of my complaints about the original. The story is still okay, in my opinion. One thing I really didn't care for was the main character. I felt like he was kind of the most forgettable person out of like the majority of the cast, honestly. He seemed to be kind of just there just to move the plot along and like, hey, we got this new guy and he's supposed to be savior of Earth realm. And cool. Let's make way for more interesting people now.
Well, here's the thing. From my understanding, Alex, I think this is the first of a trilogy that they're trying to do with Mortal Kombat. So from my understanding, this is kind of like just trying to lay the groundwork of these characters who are going to be entering in this tournament. It's basically they're just fighting and they're trying to train themselves to unlock their, gosh, I forget the word of it, but it's like their potential to enter into Mortal Kombat. And I thought that part was good. I thought that stuff was good. It's like, okay, they're getting themselves ready and trained. It's like, one of the problems I had with the original movie is like, oh yeah, we do not know what Mortal Kombat is, but we're gonna fight it. And it's like, okay, maybe in a superficial game world, yeah, but this is kind of grounding in reality where it's like it's going to take a while for them to train. And this was like the testing ground for that. So I don't know. I thought it was good and a great way of introducing the characters, better than the original movie did. But you're right. I think the main character was a little forgettable, but I see why they made him the way he was, trying to drive home the theme. But look, come on, you got to admit though, Sub-Zero and Scorpion fight.
Oh,
For me, that was worth watching this movie because hot damn, that was so good.
Yeah, again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying. Is like the fights are just so much better in the new movie. There's a couple characters that I wish they had kind of kept in, and I don't necessarily want to just jump into spoilers and like, oh yeah, this person, you won't be seeing them much longer. But yeah, there's a couple characters I wish they kept in because they were cool. But oh well, there's a whole cast from the original game that we can still see. But either way, I'm interested in seeing how it turns out as a trilogy, as a series. I understand, this was kind of the setup movie. This is where we start to get the ball rolling and introduce the main cast before I guess we really get into it. Still, I really hope they do more for the main character, Cole Young, because he wasn't very memorable. He wasn't super likable, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, honestly, there's still a whole list of other characters that are going to be brought into this. So he may not be the main focus. This was just like the connection with the, Sub-Zero and like how this was like, oh, and I spoiled it for us. Anyway, this was like our way of just kind of getting into this world and seeing why they fight the way they do. So after this, who knows? I mean, we still have Johnny Cage that we need to kind of get to. We still have Katana. Eventually is going to have to come at some point. So I'm hoping she actually delivers when they introduce her. So we'll see.
Yeah. So I'm interested. As much as I didn't really care for the movie as a whole, I am still interested to see where they take this and I kind of want to watch the other movies when they eventually come out,
Yeah. And I feel like that's a success on the movie's end. If it delivered on that, then yeah, I think it's a successful movie. And that's the reason why I liked it so much. Because I'm like, okay, if this is a trilogy and this is setting it up, it just means the big tournament is going to be well worth the wait.
That's fair. Yeah. Oh, Joe, I think if you do watch this, you're probably gonna be a bit disappointed with Goro. I'll just let you know right now.
No, my main man.
I know. Yeah. Sadly, he kind of still goes down in not a bitch way, but that better well worth seeing.
Yeah.
As long as he gets all four of his arms ripped out, I'll be relatively happy.
Well,
no.
Yeah. No.
I'm actually surprised I haven't gotten around to this yet. I was planning on watching it right away, and then the word of mouth was kind of mixed to negative on it. I just kept pushing it back, so it is. I'll get around to it. Maybe this next week. We'll see.
I guess you'll be the tiebreaker. I mean, I liked the movie. Alex apparently was about it. Maybe you might be the tiebreaker. Anyway, we're done hijacking this. So what else did you watch, Alex?
So, didn't watch actually any other movies. But yesterday I did watch Secret Sky. So Secret Sky is a online festival done by Porter Robinson, a music artist. He plays mostly. My friends are probably gonna get mad at me for getting the genres wrong, but it's like it's synth pop, electro pop, and various forms of EDM. In the past, he's held a actual, IRL festival called Second Sky. But last year, obviously due to COVID, he didn't get the chance to. So what he did is he did a online festival called Secret Sky. Last year was cool. I had actually had a lot of fun watching that because it was just me and my friends all just hanging out for the day, just with the music playing in the background, just talking and watching and whatnot. And last year was all broadcast on Twitch and YouTube, so it was very easy to keep up and see everyone. This year was the same, so still broadcast live on Twitch, on YouTube, But he took an extra step in he created an online world that you could go into. So you go to the Secret Sky website and you load in and you can walk around as this little character that Porter's created, little guy with like a little hood and a cloak, and you can go and walk around this virtual stage, I guess. It's like this hilly, grassy area, and you can go to different places. You can go climb up this huge, tall tree because they're partnered with Wizards of the Coast, who's done Magic. You can go into like I think it's one of the Magic worlds. I haven't played Magic, so I'm not entirely sure. But you can go into that and watch the concert from there. It was just really cool. It was a really just unique kind of way or a way of doing it, and it's not something that's totally new. What was it? Travis Scott kind of did something similar with Fortnite a while last year. It's things that have been done actually in Minecraft for quite a while now. So it's not an entirely new concept, but I thought it was just done really well. Yeah, when you walk in, you have the whole like area that you can walk around in, and there's a huge screen you can watch the actual the live sets from all these different artists that Porter has brought on to play in the festival. I unfortunately didn't get to watch a whole lot of it, but I was able to at least watch kind of the opening. One of the opening artists, Laxity, which was pretty cool. That was when I was kind of just checking out the world, and I was able to wake up in time to watch the final two sets, which was Rez and Porter Robinson himself. He had just come out with a new album recently called Nurture, which is a pretty good album from what little I've listened to it of it. I'm not. I will say, I'm not a huge fan of Porter's music. I like it, but it's not like something that's my favorite. Just that kind of music doesn't have a whole lot of replayability for me. But either way, seeing it live is just a different live, quote unquote, is just a different experience, honestly, though. The couple friends that I was watching it with are huge fans. They know all of his music and everything like that. So it was cool just to hear them get super excited and, kind of feed off of that and be excited for it as well.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask, is there any way to like watch like a replay of this anywhere online, or is this only just like was a live stream and that was it?
I don't know if it's saved on YouTube or if the Twitch VOD is still available. I'm sure there are people that have re-uploaded it, so you can probably watch different sets, find them on YouTube somewhere. I don't know if like an official rebroadcast or VOD is going to be available at any time. I haven't checked. But you can definitely at least find people's recordings of it and whatnot, which will be fine.
Well, it sounds like it was either way. From what you saw and what you heard, you highly recommend checking this festival out in the future if it continues.
Yeah, then he actually will be continuing the IRL festival actually later this fall. Yeah, so I don't think he's going to do Secret Sky anymore, which is the name of the virtual festival, and he'll continue on with Second Sky, which is the actual festival name. Yeah, kind of unfortunate because I don't think I'm going to go to I definitely probably won't go to the actual festival, mostly because, well, it's up in San Francisco and a little bit far for me, and I'm not into the music enough for it to be worth it for me to make the trip and buy the ticket and whatnot. But it was Secret Sky was a really cool thing, and honestly just kind of like a unique experience, both from last year and this year. So it was
Get
just
you there
nice.
on our Film Illiterates funds.
Oh yeah, all $2.
Yeah. Once you get that Patreon up, Joe.
Hey.
But yeah, that's what I've watched this week. That's about it.
Very nice. Nate, what have you been watching?
Okay, I decided to try to take a stab at a show that just aired last week on HBO Max, and this is the new Kate Winslet detective drama thriller series, Mayor of Easttown. A detective in a small Pennsylvania town investigates a local murder while trying to keep her family life from falling apart. So this show stars Kate Winslet. What can I say about this so far? Not my cup of tea. I tried watching it. It's just kind of, I don't know, very cliche. There are some moments that I do like because she kind of plays like this older East Coastan woman who always seems to be kind of like babysitting everyone in town. And that's a weird thing. Like there's an opening scene where this guy is running from her, but she knows him personally. And the way she is able to arrest him when he goes into hiding is like almost kind of like a mother or an aunt trying to coax her nephew or son out. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is the interesting stuff. I kind of find this stuff interesting. The rest of the show, or just the first episode, was kind of depressing and miserable and just nasty. I don't know, maybe people might like that, but it just wasn't for me. So I don't think I'm going to continue with this one. Actually, another reason why I wanted to watch this is because the first episode was directed by Craig Zorbell, which, Joe, if you know, was the same guy who directed The Hunt.
Oh, nice.
So I just wanted to kind of see how his style of directing still translates. And I see still some good stuff. I just don't think the writing was all there. Yeah, so I would say a soft pass on this movie. What I did watch also was one of the Oscar-nominated films up for Best Picture, and that is the family drama Minari, directed by Lee Isaac Chung. Synopsis is: a Korean-American family moves to an Arkansas farm in search of its own American dream. This was an interesting one. Can't say like there's a whole lot of stuff that was pleasant about it. It's actually kind of a depressing movie. I was hoping it'd be much more. There's some good tender moments, especially when the grandmother comes into the picture. She's kind of fun to listen to and watch. And really, I think it's interesting. You think it's all about the dad, it's all about the son, but I think the story becomes about her, really. And it's interesting when there's that flip that happens, because she was the one character I think I empathized with the most. She was, obnoxious. There's a joke that the grandson makes. Is like, you don't even act like a grandmother, because she's like drinking Mountain Dew, watching wrestling, and teaching them how to play cards. And she's a blast to watch. But the rest of the movie just kind of left me pretty heavy-hearted, because it's like you're just watching this family just trying to make it ends meet. And this is actually inspired, I think, by the director-writer's actual story. Like his father took the family out to start a farm in Arkansas as well. So it does have kind of a bit of that biopic feel to it. But yeah, if anyone's not seen this movie and you have some time before the Oscars tonight, I'd say go ahead and check it out. It's a little heavy, but I think you guys might get something out of it.
Yeah, that's one of the ones. That one and Promising Young Woman are the two nominated films that I think I'm most interested in checking out. So I'll have to get around to both of them sooner than later.
I would probably say watch A Promising Young Woman first, because that one's interesting. I was like, I didn't expect it to be this good. Let's see. And last but not least, another film I kind of started to revisit was The Thief and the Cobbler.
Is this the animated film?
It is an animated film, yes.
Okay, I haven't watched it, but I know of it.
Yeah, so this is a film that came out at the same time when Aladdin came out, and a lot of people compare it to as like the cheap knockoff version of Aladdin that Miramax was trying to spearhead. But here's the funny thing, is that this movie has taken 30 years to make. It actually started in the 60s by Richard Williams, who wrote and directed and animated this. But because of funding, it took so long for him to finally do it. It was a bit more of a passion project, and it kept getting put back. Till eventually Miramax said, all right, we'll buy it, but we're going to do all these changes because we want to kind of compete with, Aladdin, which is like, Disney musical friendly. So there's a lot of new stuff they animated into it. But I didn't watch that version. There's actually a version online of Richard Williams' original director's cut of what he had envisioned. And it's kind of like all pieced together with original footage from the movie. Like the mixing and the audio is done differently with different voice actors. But it has the storyboards and like the original dubbing or the demos stitched in with it. And it has this weird cobbled kind of like vibe to it. But I don't know, I liked it. It's kind of interesting when you're watching it. Most of it is very much just silent, except for Zigzag, the sorcerer, who's voiced by Vincent Price, kind of being the villain who's rhyming throughout the whole thing. But it has a very interesting kind of like Arabian Night tale to it. Like it has that kind of fantasy vibe to it that I think if they had just done it this way, it would have been a masterpiece. It would have been a classic. I think this was kind of cool that some people actually put together like his vision, and I don't know, just you can actually watch it on YouTube, and it's kind of just interesting and just a fascinating watch.
Yeah, I'm looking at like pictures of it, and the Aladdin comparison is very striking.
Yes, I mean the Sorcerer Blue and kind of almost Jafarish like, but this is all like original like concept and animation, and a lot of the stuff in there, like, there's a lot of just good pantomiming scenes. Like I think the thief and the cobbler never say a word in the whole film in the original version. In the Miramax version, they're dubbed over and redone with, I think it's Matthew Broderick playing the cobbler, which it is what it is. But in the original version, they were supposed to be just two silent characters and being the main protagonists that you're following. And it's kind of great to watch. There's just like a lot of Buster Keaton like antics throughout it. And just the visual sequences of those action scenes are just fantastic to watch. Like, I don't know, if anyone wants to get into good animation, check out Richard Williams and his stuff that he's done in the past. A lot of it's not good, but you can see a lot of his trademark styles. And this is a good version of it existing. So I would say a high recommendation if you guys can find the director's cut or the recobbled version of this movie out there. Do not watch the actual theatrical release version because it's a sore to watch. But I'd say check it out. If you guys are interested in animation, it's worth taking a gander at.
Very nice.
And that's all I've watched. So Joe, you're last.
So I've recently, over the course of the past month, I've acquired a few hauls of Blu-rays that I'm slowly been working through for the past week. So one of them was Severin Films released a Blu-ray of Day of the Animals from 1977, directed by William Girdler. A battle for survival ensues after a group of hikers encounters a chemically imbalanced forest. So I was mostly interested in this one for the behind the scenes stuff. Just I love watching behind the scenes material on movies, especially movies from the 70s and 80s that had lots of animals in them and lots of animal wrangling. I kind of want to see like what goes into that. Movies like
Roar.
Like Roar is is kind of the prime example, or even Beastmaster. Where they got all these. They got the eagle and they've got the tiger together on screen. Like, how do they get the animals to work together?
Well, in Roar, we know they didn't get them to work together.
They just didn't. Exactly. So I was really interested in this one. Also, Day of the Animals has Leslie Nielsen, who plays a real bastard in this movie.
Oh, really? So he's not a comedian this time.
This is pre-Airplane Leslie Nielsen.
Oh, really? Oh, 1977. You're right.
Yeah. So I was really looking forward to this one. At the very least, I was hoping for a crazy when animals attack movie. It's just hikers go up into the woods and global warming makes all the animals go crazy, like in the mountains, go crazy and attack the campers. And they come back down to the town, or the ones who survive come back down to the town, which has been evacuated because animals be crazy, yo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so the movie itself is just pretty good. I give it 3 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. It's not as crazy and over the top entertaining as I was hoping it would be. Most of the animal attack scenes, when they really get going, they just kind of fizzle out as opposed to leading up to some really crazy moments. It has some great moments in there. Leslie Nielsen. You want to watch Leslie Nielsen shirtless in the rain wrestling with a bear? This is the movie for you.
I'm interested.
I'm looking at it right now. I kind of want to do a pass on this because, shirtless Leslie Nielsen. No, thank you.
Hold on.
Wait, why?
Wait, why you dissing Leslie Nielsen?
I'm sorry. It's just that chest hair. It's kind of like he's got whips of clouds coming off of him. Like, what the fuck?
But he wrestles a bear, Nate.
Okay, well, I'll probably give it a shot. I'm seeing some of the stills from it. It looks funny. He's getting all like grizzly, like I'm like, okay,
it's great. It's
he's getting grizzly to
exactly.
fight a bear.
Yeah, he's getting grizzly to fight a bear.
So the movie itself is just kind of okay. If you like animals attack movies, it's got some good moments in there. It's more, if you're going to watch this, I would recommend just blind buying Severin's Blu-ray because they have an interview with the animal wrangler on the movie who sounds insane. Talking about like throwing animals at people and just all this crazy stuff. Where he's talking about, you're like, oh yeah, I was standing in front of the actors and a dog bit me, and I'm like, okay, well this is happening now. I'm like, what is this guy?
Oh my god,
it's great. So there's some great interviews on the Blu-ray. And the movie itself is pretty entertaining too. It's okay. So a mild recommendation for Day of the Animals, high recommendation for the Blu-ray. And another movie that I got recently was from Warner Archive, who rumors have been going around that Warner Archive might be shutting down. So I've been trying to buy up Warner Archive Blu-rays in case they go out of business. Nothing's been officially announced, but they've been doing layoffs and they moved their store over to Amazon, and the writing's kind of on the wall. So,
oh boy. All right. Well, what did you get?
So the one I'm going to talk about is Mystery of the Wax Museum from 1933, directed by Michael Curtiz. The disappearance of people and corpses leads a reporter to a wax museum and a sinister sculptor. So this, I believe, was the original House of Wax movie. I think the House of Wax was a remake of this, and then House of Wax itself was remade at least once or twice after this. This movie, 1933, it was done with two strip Technicolor, so a very early version of color on film. It's a rare type of color, so it doesn't look like natural colors or even vibrant colors like you see in a lot of those early Technicolor movies. It's almost, I mean, I know this is very punny, but it has a kind of waxy look to the whole thing.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
But it is, lots of emphasis on the reds and the greens, and it almost looks kind of, it's not sepia, but it kind of has that effect on you.
Yeah.
But it is color, so it's a very stylized look that is kind of a novelty. It's beautiful to look at in this movie. It isn't the vibrant colors you're used to seeing, but it's a very fascinating kind of look to this movie that's unique just to this type of movie. What year did House of Wax come out?
I believe that came out in the 50s.
Okay.
Right at the time when a stereoscopic 3D first came out. It was the first stereoscopic 3D film, so they probably redid it for this. But I'm looking at some of the stills from it, and you're right, Joe. It has a very interesting waxy feel to it. Like the oranges and the greens do kind of stick out unnaturally.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful to look at, honestly. This movie is also a pre-code movie, so it was really fun seeing some of the stuff they got away with. Some of the, this is by no means a violent movie, but there's a little bit of grotesque stuff there. Lowering bodies out windows, and at one point you have the snappy female reporter asking just some random cop like, "How's your sex life?" Like stuff like that. Really bluntly.
Oh wow, okay. I actually want to watch this now. I mean, I'm looking at this. It's like, this looks actually way better than House of Wax. I'm going to say that.
Yeah, it is a very entertaining movie. So it's interesting from a historical standpoint. It's visually interesting to look at, and it's got some really great little genre moments in the middle. It kind of, it opens with a fantastic set piece with all these wax figures, some of which were played by actors because the wax figures they had got melted under the lights, so they had to bring the actors in to hold still for a couple of the shots.
My gosh.
So Fay Wray is in this, of King Kong fame. It's, I have a high recommendation for Mystery of the Wax Museum. Very entertaining little pre-code oddity of a movie.
Joe, I'm actually almost kind of curious. Maybe we should actually do a review of this movie and then kind of compare it to the Vincent Price House of Wax.
Ooh, I would love to do that.
I'm actually very keen to do this if we can do this.
Yeah, I've still never seen Vincent Price's House of Wax, so that would be an interesting double feature for me.
Yeah, just to see like if this was like the first movie to come up with this concept and then they just redid it for 3D and with Vincent Price, like which one upholds better. So
yeah, I'm down.
Check it out. Okay,
and then we go watch the 2005 House of Wax.
No.
I mean, I'd be down, but
I know you would. I'm not.
No.
Oh man! Hey, speaking of which, Shout Factory's releasing a Blu-ray of the 2005 House of Wax.
Oh, why?
I don't know.
It looks terrible.
Why don't we actually just buy all the copies and just recreate our own House of Wax movie where it's like we just burn these copies of the DVD?
And we burn them into a candle.
Yeah, pretty much.
Last movie I'm going to talk about is not one that I've purchased, but is one that I hadn't seen before, which is Kubo and the Two Strings from 2016, directed by Travis Knight.
Hold the phone. You haven't seen this movie yet?
This is my first time watching this movie. The only Leica movie that I'd seen until now was Coraline. I haven't seen Box Trolls, Paranorman, any of those. So
Okay, so what were your thoughts on Kubo and the Two Strings?
I thought it was quite good, actually. It's the artistry is interesting. I was surprised when I heard that it was a stop motion movie, because watching this, I'm thinking like it looks like little figures, but a lot of this animation looks so complex in a way that I didn't buy that they did it with stop motion. But then you see some of the behind the scenes stuff, and it is fascinating, some of the effects they pulled off. With like
Mhm.
there's a giant skeleton at one point, and they had like this massive skeleton prop that they moved
Mhm.
around, which is
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah, like I think like 95% of this movie was all stop motion, and they only brought in like some CGI to just for things that they just couldn't do.
Just to round it out.
It's a beautiful movie. I like the folktale aspect to it. The hero's quest sort of movie. I like these sort of movies where a hero needs to go from one obstacle to the next, and what new creatures will he come up on. It's sort of the Homer's The Odyssey format, which I really enjoyed. The ending, without spoiling the ending, the movie did not land the ending for me. It's very hollow, and I kind of felt like they didn't quite know what to do, and it meant well, but it did feel kind of like, hooray, gaslighting, sort of, in a way that just didn't sit well with me, but it didn't by any means ruin the movie. So it's a fantastic stop motion spectacle with heart to it, which doesn't quite stick the landing, but still a very, two thumbs up recommendation for Kubo and the Two Strings. So, and with that, let's move on to our main topic, which is Columbus from 2017, not 1917.
Oh my god.
Columbus from 2017, directed by Kogonada.
There's this belief that if you're not there when a family member dies, your spirit will roam aimlessly and become a ghost.
I saw you at the hospital.
Are you from here?
Yeah.
You like it here?
I'm really interested in architecture.
Yeah, I hear this town is quite the mecca.
There were nights that my mom just wouldn't come home at all.
Mom, it's me. Call me back.
How long do I stay here?
As long as it takes. You're his son.
I want to show you something.
This was one of the first modernist banks in America.
Who are you?
God, shut up. I'm just trying to tell you about this building.
A Korean-born man finds himself stuck in Columbus, Indiana, where his architect father is in a coma. The man meets a young woman who wants to stay in Columbus with her mother, a recovering addict, instead of pursuing her own dreams. So, Alex, tell us, why did we watch Columbus this week?
As with most of the movies that I pick, it's just something that's on my watch list. I don't remember exactly why I put this on here. I think it was mostly just it had to do with architecture, which is something that I'm kind of interested in. I'm not super knowledgeable on architecture in any really way, shape, or form, but I like looking at buildings, cool buildings, So anyway, it just seemed like a cool movie, and it seemed like a very like calm and quiet movie, which is something that I really enjoy, and it really was. That's exactly what it was. So yeah, that's why I watched it. I think another friend of mine had recommended it, so I checked it. So I put it on my watch list, and now we're watching it here.
All right. Well, it was an interesting recommendation because I remember this movie coming out in 2017, and it was kind of on a lot of critics' radar. Like they were talking quite a bit about this.
Really?
Yeah, I remember seeing it, and also has John Chow in it, who was just coming off of the Star Trek franchise, and this was like, I guess, kind of like his own like little indie project trying to go in that direction.
Yeah.
So I remember, I guess they were picking it up, or they were trying to promote it on that level.
Interesting. Yeah, I had never heard about this movie, at least from what I can remember, until I saw it on Letterboxd.
And what do you think of it? Did it meet your expectations as a calm, relaxing, nice movie?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Nate, had you seen this before, and what did you think of it this time?
I have not seen it before. Just kind of like Alex in a way. I have seen it pop up quite a few times. I do remember back in 2017, it was being talked around by a lot of critics as, this is kind of like an achievement in some way. I never got around to watching it, so this was a good chance to take a look at it. And I want to say that I liked it. I want to say that I found it interesting, but maybe Alex, I'm sorry, no stab against you, but maybe this is just not my type of movie. And it's weird because it reminded me of a lot of other movies I do like. It reminded me of like Lost in Translation or Woody Allen's Manhattan, or I think a more, kind of recent version of this is Alfonso Cuarón's Roma, where it's like, it's less really about a good story and really more of just kind of being atmospheric and capturing the aesthetic of a town or a city or just an environment. Because this movie spends a lot of time just like soaking in the scenery of this little town of Columbus.
Yeah.
Seeing the architecture nestled in the trees, just the beauty, and just having the music by Hammock just playing over in the background, which I guess that's another thing you really liked about this movie, Alex, right?
Yep. Of course.
That was like one of the things I put down. I'm like, oh yeah, Hammock did the music, which I think is a big win for this movie because it does set the tone for this
Very well.
But I don't know. I think for me, that was it, and that's all it kind of offered. And I guess I was hoping for a little bit more. It kind of fits the genre of like, almost Boy Meets Girl or two perfect strangers kind of meet and they have a unique relationship, but it didn't feel like there was a complete arc or anything like that. And maybe we can talk about that as we get more into the story of it. But maybe I was kind of hoping something more of that was communicated better in the visuals or the story that Kogonada was trying to tell.
So I hadn't seen this movie before. It was just kind of tangentially on my radar. It's one of those, I also want to say indie art house movies that you hear about and maybe I'll get to go see them. And this is the sort of thing where during that time, I probably would have watched at like the local landmark, theater. I would have gotten there in the middle of the day, gotten a, just after lunchtime showing, sat down in this dark theater, really focused in on it, would have enjoyed it, come out, chatted with you guys about it for a little bit, and then maybe a week or two later, probably forget about it as this nice experience I had a couple weeks ago. But for me, that's the ideal way for me to enjoy a movie like this, and if I missed it, which, this movie came out in 2017, I was in a much I'm in a much different place, now and then than I was back in 2014. I just didn't get around to it. And, if I didn't see it when it was in theaters, I likely would never have watched it. It just kind of passed me by until Alex brought it up for the podcast and thought, all right, I'll watch it. But, I watched it like on my phone this morning.
Oh my gosh. No.
So Alex, you and me are just going to tune Joe out because
he can't fully appreciate it.
No, he can't.
Oh,
he can't.
I should have watched it a couple days ago, and schedule out time. Instead, I just kind of threw it on my phone this morning when I could get it in before the podcast tonight, which is a much different experience. And I still enjoyed it, but I don't think I got as much out of it as I would have. I mean, some movies I can just watch on my phone like that and be like, all right, I get it right away. This sort of movie, I really needed to be able to zero in on in a really dark theater, So taking all that into account, I did enjoy this movie. To what degree, though, I'm still uncertain. I personally didn't get a whole lot out of it from a thematic level. It's a very pretty movie to look at, and I appreciate its pace, but I'm not quite sure that its pace is conducive to the sort of story it's telling. It is very lackadaisical. It is very casual and conversational. But if I'm going to go into a movie like that, I like to come out of it feeling like I'm a richer person, or at least that I understood it a little bit better. Something like Amour, Michael Haneke's Amour. I wasn't crazy about it the first time I saw it, but I didn't feel like I didn't get it. I felt like, oh, this was an experience that didn't quite relate to me, but I really appreciate what it's trying to do, and I really enjoy the way it's told. This movie I sat through, I'm like, it's a very comfortable movie, but I personally didn't get a whole lot out of it other than appreciating the way it's shot and appreciating the relationship between the characters. So I don't know. Maybe after listening to your thoughts more on it, Alex, I'll come to a little bit more of an appreciation of it. As of right now, I enjoyed it, but it's not the sort of thing I feel like I'd ever watch again unless I could watch it in a theater setting.
Fair.
Yeah.
So that's it for this episode of the Film Lessons podcast.
Well, actually, I might have something I want to talk about, Alex, and maybe you're going to hit on this eventually too.
Okay.
The guy who directed this, the video essayist, filmmaker, Kogonada, this was his first debut feature film,
right,
from my understanding.
Yeah.
Like before, he had done like other film essays on other filmmakers, and kind of examining the aesthetic of their style over the years and how that translates. Do you think his style of filmmaking translates well to a story like this, or the story he was trying to tell?
Yes. Obviously, he's very well versed in film, having done a myriad of video essays on different really well known and celebrated directors. So I feel like obviously he's taken quite a lot of notes from them. And yeah, I do think that his story and his style does work for this kind of film. The film is just about all kind of like about the sort of messiness of life and the way things will suddenly come in and go out, and I really love his way of just capturing simple life as everyone's going about their days. Specifically, another friend on Letterboxd had mentioned how the movie resembles another director, Yasujiro Ozu, who's a older Japanese director that I guess had a similar way of looking at just everyday life. So he's obviously very influenced by him, and he has a video essay on, or a couple video essays on Ozu. So he's obviously taking notes there, and I do think that for this kind of story where it's really just about just life and there's no huge drama, there's no huge action or anything like that, his way of just picking apart and building this atmosphere of just natural everyday life and really finding the beauty in smaller moments works splendidly for this.
Yeah, so interesting that you mentioned Ozu, because Ozu actually is known for the 1953 film Tokyo Story, which, in looking up and doing some research on this movie, was actually one of the biggest inspirations for this. I think Kogonada mentioned that he really was inspired by Ozu and wanted to kind of like almost do a movie as a homage, but also like his own stab at doing an Ozu film.
Yeah.
And so that's what Columbus was. And it's interesting that you kind of mentioned that, Alex, because I was kind of getting that was what he was trying to do. But I think a movie that kind of did it better, and it's interesting because he also made a video essay on this movie as well, was Alfonso Cuarón's Roma.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing that movie when it first came out and getting the same kind of impact, where it was not a whole lot going on. You're kind of watching this this girl, this maid, going about her day, just cleaning the house and serving this family, and watching almost every step that she's doing. But he made this comment in that video essay where it's like, you're watching every step because every step matters. Every moment of her life does matter, even if it's going up the stairs, doing laundry, cleaning up the dog shit in the driveway. It's like every moment does matter with that. And something similar is happening here in Columbus. It's just where I feel like Roma does it better. And in here, he's trying, but I'm not seeing what he's trying to capture. And if it's the city, if it's the town of Columbus that he's trying to capture, is like, I'm going to make this little kind of menagerie of shots to represent this city. And it's less about, the two characters that we're following. Then cool, I would have been on board with that. But it felt like he kept trying to have that story pushed through. Like, focus on this character, focus on this guy that she just met and where they're going. But at the very end, it doesn't really go anywhere. You don't feel like anything was resolved from that.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I feel like the city of Columbus was more used as just kind of like a just a gorgeous backdrop, honestly. And that I also kind of feel like Casey and Jin talk about it in the beginning of the film, where this kind of draws parallel to what I was saying about like finding moments in everyday life that are magical. And they're talking about how a lot of people in Columbus don't really realize the pieces of architecture that are there. And so I think that kind of that that parallel of, you know, being in a place, you know, living your life without either taking time or just not having the wherewithal to realize there's a lot of different unique moments and whatnot in whatever it is you're doing, even if whatever it is you're doing is not particularly exciting or interesting.
Yeah, no, it does bring that up. And actually, you know, maybe we can talk a little bit about this. You mentioned one of the big reasons that drew you to this movie was the architecture, or how it was focusing on architecture.
Yeah.
And I forget if this was mentioned by one of the characters, so help me out. Joe, maybe you might have more comments on this, but I remember writing this note down when I watched it and saying that architecture is a healing factor, but it's also a barrier. I can't remember if it was Casey, her character, you know, mentioning how she feels like architecture is a healing.
It was Jin talking about it. He had been reading a book by one of his father's favorite architects, and they were talking about one of the mental hospital.
Okay, so basically, how like these foundations or these buildings and architecture are meant for, like, you know, healing. But I kind of made some kind of a comment where there's little times and moments where the architecture kind of creates a barrier for the characters, and it also brings them together. And it was just an interesting juxtaposition where I think fences is one thing I made note here. A fence is actually where both of the characters first meet.
Yeah.
And how that was shot was very interesting. Like, you think, okay, everything was so framed so perfectly with windows and buildings and bridges. It's very symmetrical. But then when that comes to that fence scene, it's very diagonal. There's a bit of perspective to it, and it's a tracking shot as they're walking along it, talking with each other. And, you know, a fence, you think, okay, symbolically it's supposed to be a divider, it's supposed to be separating you, yet it's the one thing that brought them together, and the way it was shot was interesting. So maybe that is something that Kogonada is bringing to the movie, is kind of like challenging how we view architecture in film.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect movie to do that in. But yeah, I can definitely see that. And then obviously that fence is there because at the very beginning, you know, they're just meeting for the first time. They're kind of having that barrier of being strangers that's eventually broken, and, you know, they can both be on the same side of whatever, looking at the whatever piece of architecture there Casey has taken Jin to see.
Oh yeah, but it's even interesting how there's other motifs in here. There's windows. Windows also play another huge theme where you think, okay, windows gives you a view into what's going on in the character's life. Yet it's the one thing that when you go to a window, you don't get any information out of it. There's a scene I'll talk about later where I thought this was done very well, where Casey has this moment of exposing something that's personal to her, and yet the window is that barrier for the audience. The audience will never know what she said, but it's kind of interesting how it challenged that motif. Usually a window like that would be something where it's like you're focused on the character, but he decides, you know what? No, I'm going to keep you away from this audience. I don't want you to listen in what she has to say about this, or even what emotion she's going through. There's other moments where she has, you know, there's a crying scene later on where you can't hear it, but you're seeing it going down. So you don't know what she's crying about. But it's like he's using that as like a way of like saying, I'm creating this barrier. A thing that you think you should be transparent and see things through is going to be the one thing that closes you off.
I will say, I one thing that I did like a lot about this movie regarding the actual architecture was the way that the movie uses empty space in its framing, as far as framing characters against the backdrops of the cities, the city, the different kinds of buildings they're there and talking about. You know, as far as just straight up framing wise goes, I haven't seen a movie use blank space that well since The Invisible Man, which used, you know, blank space in a very different way. But I like how it filled the frame with everything. I think what connected with me most about this movie was I like the actual dialogue and relationships between the characters. It felt very casual and very real.
Yeah.
A lot of times in movies like this, the dialogue, it doesn't sound flowery, but it sounds unnatural, you know, in a very necessary way. A lot of these movies sound like these characters are talking in a way that you just don't hear people talking like in real life.
Yeah.
This one, I bought that these were just a couple of people hanging out, talking about their problems. and the way each topic fed into the other. Yeah, I bought that these characters just kind of bumped into each other and started chatting it up, and then before you know it, they're talking about their personal issues with their parents. And how that led into the fact that they both have very specific, different issues they're dealing with their parents, and they can help each other with that. But at the end of the day, they both still have their own baggage that they'll always carry with them. There are no easy answers to any of their issues. Casey's dealing with her mom, who is going through addiction and is lying to her. Jin is dealing with the fact that he may lose his dad and never had any real connection with him. And even though Jin can help show Casey her truth and what she needs to hear, she turns that right back around on him and says, well, how about you and this? And he doesn't have any clear answers, for himself either. So it's a very realistic depiction of two people who are hurting, trying to help each other. But in the end, their own baggage is also holding them back.
Yeah. And it's interesting how that baggage is something that never does get resolved. I think you're right, Joe, that that's why I think makes this movie feel a lot like real life. And that's the one thing I see a lot of people talk about with this movie is the dialogue is very natural. The outcomes are also very realistic. There's no big, buildup or, payoff or anything like that. I mean, the only payoff, spoiler alert, that this movie gets to is that she eventually leaves the town. She decides to pursue her dream of going to college and has to leave all this behind. With Jin, it's hard to say. It sounds like, he's going to have to wait a little bit longer, but there's no big finale scene of like, this is where they go and this is how it's going to end. It kind of just leaves you hanging. And I think that's the one thing that maybe is what frustrated me about this movie. But at the same time, looking at it at the end of the day, maybe that's what the director was trying to say is, this is kind of as close to real life as it can get when it comes to these kinds of stories. There's no big resolution. There's no big affirmation. It's just, we came, met each other. We are going through this and we're still going to go through this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I honestly think that's one of the big draws of the movie is just how, I guess, lifelike the movie and the like Joe, you were mentioning the dialogue, the story was. It's just, you oftentimes don't get perfect tied up with a bow resolutions in real life. So, why should you really be able to get that in a movie?
I will say, taking that into consideration, I felt like the ending was a little bit messy in a way, not relating to the fact that, oh, it's just real life. In real life is messy because so Casey, since we are talking about spoilers, Casey does have some catharsis to her, the conclusion of her arc. It's not a tied up in a bow, nice and tidy ending, but she makes a decision and you feel relieved for her in making that decision. You feel like she's moving on to a better place. She's grown and moves on to where she needs to be. Her mother still has all these issues, but she's taken a stance to say, no, I'm not going to sit around waiting for my mom to change all this time. I'm going to go off and do all these things that I wanted to do for myself. For Jin, I wasn't quite sure what the takeaway was with that because I never felt like there was a moment where I know that he had talked to her and he had that moment where she said that don't let him die alone. You need to stay here with him on as long as it'll take. And you kind of felt like there's a little bit of a release for him there, but you never really got, at least I never got the impression that he had ever come to peace with any sort of decision until at the end there, he's just kind of saying, yeah, well, I've decided this is the best thing to do. I'm going to wait around. It's, for me, it kind of felt like a switch that the movie didn't want to end on a downer note, but it didn't quite know how to resolve his arc without making it feel like a dreamy Hollywood movie type ending either.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess maybe that's where I'm a little frustrated because I feel like John Cho, he's a good actor.
Yeah.
And I think like he was like the A-list actor that could have, I think he was the one that was kind of used for just a lot of the promotion of this because he was very well recognized. I just feel like for someone like him and the talent that he has, especially coming off of like the Star Trek movies, this would have been a great, indie steamboat to kind of like drive that and actually show his chops. There's a few moments, but you're right, Joe, there is no resolution. There is no kind of like conclusion that he comes to with the things with his father. And I kind of wish his character could have been maybe utilized a lot better or just explored more.
I think we can agree on Casey's resolution. thought that was very fitting and worked really well for the movie. I feel like while there wasn't a whole lot of resolution for Jin, it still worked well enough for me that I could go along with it. For me, it didn't really detract, I guess, as much. I mean, he did have the conversation with Eleanor, and then kind of the conversation with Casey when they're talking about one of the buildings at the end that he'd been kind of like searching for from his father's notes. And I feel like in those scenes, he comes to his resolution a lot earlier than I guess Casey does. And so I guess it doesn't play out as well as Casey's, where, you know, she has the big lead up to where she's leaving the town finally, and, you know, the more intimate moments with like her mom and saying goodbye to Jin and whatnot. So it doesn't show his resolution as much, but I still felt like it was there.
You know what? Actually, I'm going to take it back. I think there are moments where you do get Jin's resolution somewhere in it. Like the biggest thing he's trying to come to terms with is, you know, settling terms with his father, or just being able to see things the way his father has, or like, you know, why his father wanted him to just get into architecture so much. Now, obviously with Casey, he gets a little bit of a window into that by seeing it through her eyes. But there are some moments where I kind of see, okay, this is what kind of just happened, and that's interesting. So in the beginning, we get a glimpse of Jin's father as he's like looking at his you know, where he lives right now in Columbus, just before he has a stroke. And then there's some moments later where Jin is exploring the town, and I think he's like at this monument that's like commemorating some of the founders, or, you know, people that, you know, helped Columbus, or, you know, get the architecture in Columbus started. And he kind of like stops and he takes a picture of this perspective of the column going up to the sky. Yeah. Almost like probably the way his dad would. And I think maybe that's like a little key that, okay, Jin is starting to kind of see how his father used to see the world. And maybe that's a resolution that he had to come to, was, you know, maybe I don't have much time left with my dad. Maybe I won't have a lot of stuff I can say to him, but maybe I can see the beauty that he saw in this town and maybe see it through his eyes. So maybe that's, I don't know, kind of taking back then. I think there is some kind of completion with his arc. It's just, you have to really look at the film to see it there.
Yeah. And I think that at the beginning of the film, he does say, you know, he has no real interest in architecture. And I think, you're right. And kind of coming to see architecture and I guess the world as a whole from more of his father's perspective, that does happen slowly throughout the movie. And Casey's kind of the catalyst for that.
Yeah. If anything, she inspires him, and he also pushes her to, like, you know, go find your dream, go find this, because, you know, you're too much talent to just kind of like just keep sitting here and waiting for life to start.
Yeah.
Why aren't you at the hospital?
He was never interested.
You don't want him to get better?
Maybe not.
You like her?
I think she's bright.
You, of all people, should be in college.
I just think I should stay here.
You're smart and talented. You could do a lot better.
Then what?
I think definitely one of the major draws of the film that I want to talk about is the cinematography, because god damn is it so good looking, bro.
It's very peaceful. It's very balanced. There's a lot of just, it's kind of like, it does hone in that idea of like, you know, I remember looking somewhere that the director said that Columbus was like the Athens of the prairie.
Yeah.
And it does feel like that. You get the idea of like what Casey's talking about in this movie, of like the buildings nestled in these little trees of the Midwest, and the cinematography lends itself capturing that so beautifully. You get this, I want to say, like, there's a lot of compositions where it's like the characters feel so small in the scope of everything else around them.
Yeah. And I would say obviously the fantastic architecture lends itself incredibly well, and, you know, definitely provides a huge helping hand in making pretty much every shot in this movie look gorgeous. There's a lot of small scenes that are just framed super well, like incredibly well. There's a moment where Jin, I think, is walking in like the bed and breakfast where his father was staying, and he walks to this like wall of windows, and just I literally had to stop the movie and like stare at it for like a good minute, because as he's walking up, then he's walking into the frame of the window, and then further behind him, he's framed by this archway. I was just like, are you kidding me, man? Like, this is insane.
No, the DP of this did definitely a good job with getting what Kogonada wanted to communicate about this movie, which is like, people framed within hallways and the architecture of the space.
Mhm.
And I was kind of like honing in on that. It's like one of the reasons why I like wrote down some of the other films that reminded me of was like Manhattan by Woody Allen, because the cinematography in that movie is very much similar here, where they're using the backdrop of, New York as like a way of like showing, here are the characters and the scope of the story and framing them alongside with that. And so the DP did do his homework. He kind of did know exactly what he was doing in this. And so it shows. It definitely does show.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to, I think I talked about this a little bit earlier, but finding, the beauty in just everyday normal life and things that you wouldn't necessarily normally look at as something that's gorgeous, and just finding the way to frame it just right so you can take a moment to really appreciate it. And the movie does it incredibly well, not only with obviously the fantastically gorgeous architecture, but just everywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful movie. It's kind of hard to skate around it. I kind of wish I didn't know that it was made by someone who was known for video essays also, though. Because like in the back of my head, I'm just kind of like, well, of course the movie looks like this. Of course this is someone who talks about Wes Anderson framing. Of course this is how they're going to make their movie. It's going to be a very pretty looking movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was I the only one who? I mean, I know this came out way before Parasite, but was I the only one that kind of got Parasite vibes from some of the way that he frames architecture in this? Especially, there's a house that they go to a couple of times.
Oh, are you talking about like how everything kind of has that perspective diagonal going on?
Yeah, just kind of the well, especially the very opening shots of the movie, where the woman's walking through the house, and then you see the dad standing outside. I was just thinking, like, man, these look like shots just straight out of something like Parasite.
Maybe not necessarily I was thinking Parasite, but I was thinking, if anything, like Ozu's Tokyo Story, because there's similar shots like that throughout the whole movie as well.
I mean, yeah, it's a very pretty to look at movie. I think it added to the experience of making it a very comforting, leisurely watch. But I don't know if I have a whole lot to say on it other than just like, yeah, pretty cinematography.
Fair, I guess. Yeah.
So, Alex, having this be the apex of your film going experience, the movie that you have been leading up to your entire life,
Yes.
what did you think of Columbus?
I loved it, honestly. I mean, that should be obvious by the way I've been talking about it, but yeah, I loved it. I definitely am drawn to a lot more of like the kind of the quieter and maybe artsy, I guess you could say, films. I like kind of just slice of life sort of stuff, and this is a absolutely gorgeous slice of life story. We talked about the cinematography being absolutely gorgeous. We talked about the acting being great as well. John Cho and Haley Lou Richardson are absolutely fantastic. The story was simple. It wasn't some crazy, wild experience. It was something very easy to keep up with, but it was still engaging throughout the whole movie, and I think that was obviously helped by the acting and the dialogue. And then you have the music by Hammock. I like just about everything about this movie. The ending was honestly quite fine for me. I wish we had maybe a little bit more on-screen resolution with John Cho, but I feel like it was there enough that I was satisfied with it. So yeah, it's great. It's a very relaxing and still engaging movie to watch, and I highly recommend it, honestly. One of my favorite moments of the entire movie, and that kind of works with, it really showcases not only the beautiful cinematography but just the acting as well, is there's a scene where John Cho tries to, I guess, seduce his dad's business part. I don't know exactly her relation to his,
yeah, kind of
to
like
his
his
dad.
personal assistant. But either way, yeah, that scene where they're at the bed and breakfast and it's all that one shot and it's a 4-minute locked down shot and you're just getting everything right there.
And it's amazing because it's just the shot, is absolutely gorgeous. It's 4 minutes locked off and it's just them talking. And for a lot of the scene too, is they're not directly in frame. There's two mirrors that you can watch through. And I thought that was incredible. The acting in it is great. It drives the story. It's super interesting to not only listen to, but to watch as well. And yeah, I thought that scene was phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, if you hadn't put that scene, that would have been one I would have actually like mentioned as well, because that one was a good one too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for me, I would have to say this was an interesting watch. I guess I was trying to see the hype of it at the time when a lot of critics were, praising it. But I think, Alex, you kind of hit it on the nose that this is just a little portrait of a town in everyday life. And I think if anything, that's the big thing that I think Kogonada wanted to drive home with this city is an allegory of architecture, of being in Athens in the prairie. And he wants to kind of pay homage to that. And this was a chance for him to really show his chops of I really want to just capture that kind of zen of this town, of these shots, of the music, of the acting, it just being so realistic. I think if anything, the one thing I would say I wish this movie did more of was having those visuals show a progression with the characters and the story that I was trying to tell, because it felt like it was communicating that well at times, and then it didn't really have anywhere it was going afterwards. But not to say that the cinematography and even just a lot of the framing or even just the setup of this worked. It's like it does work, and there are moments where it does actually kind of do some magical stuff. I think a scene that I'm going to mention was actually the scene where Casey's talking to Jen about the bank. It first starts off with her kind of like reiterating like all these facts. And you get the shot of her looking at herself in the reflection, and it's very distorted and angled. And then Jen asks, no. Don't just tell me all these facts. Tell me why you like this building. And it goes inside the building, shooting directly at her, and you don't hear what she says. The glass is completely closing you off audibly of revealing something personal to her. And that was like, I think all the elements I loved about this movie combined into one scene where Kogonada is trying to show, okay, this is a story about her love for architecture, and yet I'm not going to give you everything. There's going to be elements here where I'm going to break conventions, windows where you think, okay, she's frame centered, very clear, you get a good view of her, but because there's glass there, I'm not going to give you that information. This is something for her to know and never for you to find out. And I liked that scene because of that.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
Yeah, I mean, I like this movie, all things considered. It's not one that connected to me personally, but I appreciated a lot of the things in it. I appreciate that a lot of people got more out of it than I did. I can't see me ever sitting down to watch this again, but I enjoyed watching it once. I do wish that my first time watching it could have been in a little bit more of a contained environment. Would have been nice. Yeah, I mean, the actors are all doing a fantastic job. John Cho is always, a great actor. He always brings 100%. Haley Lou Richardson, I'm trying to think if I've seen her in anything else before. Nothing's coming up off the top of my head. So yeah, I would absolutely give a recommendation for this movie. I think a lot of people, if you're into personal independent movies, quieter, laid back movies, very casual, real films that feel like they have real people, I would recommend this movie, even though for me personally, it just didn't connect. So yeah, there we go. My high recommendation.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand how it's not for everyone. I still think, people should check it out, but
definitely have a lot of coffee, have a wine or something like that, and really set that mood.
Coffee. No, I think you're gonna get too excited and too, the caffeine. You need something to kind of mellow out. So
okay, so a nice little scotch, maybe just like a whiskey on the rocks, and just make sure you have John Chow there because he'll probably seduce you.
Gosh, all right, yeah.
For movie moment, I'm going to choose the scene where Casey's dancing after she finds out that her mom has been lying to her. It's just I don't know. For me personally, it kind of broke up the pace of the movie. It kind of shocked me back into the movie at a point where I was starting to be like, all right, it's just more they're two shots of people talking again with beautiful buildings in the background, and all of a sudden here's this visually striking scene of this girl out dancing in front of a car with its headlights on at nighttime, just getting all of this pent up energy and emotion out that she just does not know what to do with. She can't fully confide in Jin, and she just doesn't know where to take this emotion, so she goes out and just gets it out.
It's kind of interesting. It is still a locked off camera shot, but because it's so close and tight on her as she's moving around, it still feels very chaotic.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, definitely. I'd say probably definitely the most chaotic scene in the entire movie. Mm-hmm. It was really cool. Yeah.
With that will conclude this episode of the Film Illiterates podcast. You can find more podcast episodes on youtube.com/filmilliterates and filmilliterates.com. Alex, where can people find you?
You can find me on, Film Illiterates. We've got the old videos. We've got the old podcasts. Check them out. But you can find me personally on Rate Your Music, Letterboxd, and My Anime List, all under the name Half Scrim, HALFSCRIM.
Nate?
You can find me here at Film Illiterates. I do the podcast with these guys, as well as some videos from time to time. And I've also been in some videos that we've done in the past, but you can also find me at Instagram at Nathan_Stone_films or on Letterboxd of Nathan Stone.
And you can find me on Twitter at Film Illiterates, as well as on Letterboxd. We can find my movie diary at Film_Illiterates. Thanks for listening. Next week, we will be doing something different. We'll be shaking up, going back to a format that we've done from time to time. It's a new movie grab bag episode. Yay. Where we take a random collection of topics and do quick drive-by discussions on these. So that'll be fun. Tune in next week. It'll be a chaotic, entertaining time, to be sure.
Yeah, I've added some more to the list, so be prepared, guys.
All right. Woo! Good.
And with that, keep watching movies and keep it easy.